So my question to you is, what is life to you? What is a good life? What is Ryan Austin's good life definition?
Ultimately, you can have all the things in the world, but nothing makes you happy if those things just are there. It's because God ultimately gives you those things. So if He wants you to have things, He's going to give you. But ultimately, if you neglect those things, God will take those away from you immediately. And that's why I see so many people in life go from, zero to hero real quick, and then they go right back down to zero because they lose focus on what really is meant for those things. Like when I said purpose plus profit, God wants to reward me with purpose, and He's giving me that purpose in life. And then ultimately, my profit in life for me is to be a better person. That's what's making me successful. Forget the cars, forget all the fancy things, forget all that stuff. Ultimately, when I see six people get better and better in life, that's success for me. Seeing my friends, seeing my kids, seeing all these things, they succeed. I know that I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing the right thing around me. So that makes me a successful person. Ultimately, people just want to be seen and heard. If you can do that to somebody, if people can be seen and heard, it starts a ripple effect. And then when that ripple effect happens, you see a lot of good in the world. Be so positive that negative people don't want to hang out with you. And that's success in my life, is being around people that push you and excel you and make you better every single day and hold you accountable. Because ultimately, if I'm not being held accountable to my friends and my family and my wife and my kids, and I'm not being held accountable, I'm going to do the things that I shouldn't be doing. I used to live that life. I used to have a lot of friends, but really, how many friends did I have? Because ultimately, when I stopped doing the things I was doing, all my friends went away. I mean, you could look out in my yard right now and see all the equipment. Everybody thinks Ryan's successful. Ryan's successful. That's not what makes me successful. It's the 40-something guys and women that I have in my company that strive every single day to be better. That's what makes me successful.
So good, man. So good. Everybody listening needs to go rewind that right there. Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder. And today I got another amazing guest on the show for you. He's actually become one of my best friends. This dude and I talk probably multiple times a week, just about life, God, faith, just whatever's happening, whatever we're going through in life. We're always there for each other, and I got more respect for this dude than a lot of people in this world. So super happy to have him on. He's like a brother to me. He's a good friend. He's a father. He's a man of God. He's always willing to drop what he's doing to help anybody and everybody. And he's the owner of Birmingham Seal Co. We've actually had him on The Real Build. Now we're having him on the relaunch, so we're going to get even more in depth with this guy. Last appearance on the Real Build was March. Let's see, wait,
16th.
January, February, yep, March 16th, 2022.
Yeah.
So excited. It's been a couple years. Excited to have him on for you guys again. Ryan Austin, welcome to the Real Build. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Actually, it's pretty funny because the last time I was on here, it was Birmingham Seal Co. We actually, reinvented the wheel and just hyphenated it and put BSI Paving. So now, ultimately, we are BSI Paving here in Michigan. And what's really cool about that, you said that is last time I remember on the podcast, we were talking about life and kids and everything. And at the time, you didn't have Will.
No.
So it was like one of those things that like it's exciting to actually go into the future, and now actually you have a kid and you're going through the challenges and then ultimately the fun times that kids bring to us. So it's really cool to be back. Everything you said is I take that humbly, and I really appreciate that. And to be honest with you, we need more light in this world because it is such a dark world. And like if we can bring positive just to one person every single day, we will have that ripple effect and we will change the world. So I appreciate you having me on here, man. It's great to be
Yeah,
back.
man. Yeah, this is I'm looking forward to this. Obviously with the change in the show and everything, we can get a little more in depth in life and because you know, how we are in life, how we manage our lives, how we do all this thing. Because the last time we talked a lot of construction, this time we can talk just about life in general because what life is actually how our business it's a result of our business. I mean, that's how our business works. If our life isn't good, usually the business isn't good too. So we can hit all different topics on this now. It's a free it just feels good to be a little more open and not so construction based too. But looking forward to that. I want you just to obviously for those who didn't listen back in March of 2022, who is Ryan Austin?
So, Ryan Austin is obviously a father of four, man of God, and I married my high school sweetheart. We've been together over 27 years now, and ultimately when I talk about this is like, I'm just a guy that's just like you. I'm looking at you in the camera, I'm looking at you, and if you're listening to me, I'm just a person like you. Obviously I have my hardships, I have my my doubts sometimes and my indiscretions, but you know what, ultimately, I'm human. I make mistakes, and ultimately I'm trying to go further, with a group of people and like no like-minded people like myself, and really just trying to be better every single day and shed light. I think one of my superpowers, and I've had people tell me this is one of my superpowers, is really just finding talent in people and bringing that out. And I think that once I have that talent, I can't let that go to waste. So when God really just you know put that on my heart, it was one of those things that, like, if I didn't do it, who am I letting down? So for me, I have 40 something employees here at BSI Paving, and I show up every single day, even if I'm in a bad mood, even if I'm having problems, even if I'm struggling, because you never know if you don't show up, who's going to lose, So I hear that saying a lot in our group, and it's true. It's really true because if I didn't show up every single day and try to make people better, even myself, I'm living a life of just stagnant, a life of, you know, you feel it sometimes, man. You go through life, you go through every single day, and you're like, did I do enough today? Did I really put my 100% effort in? And ultimately, people will say most of the time that they didn't, but you have tomorrow, and I've said this in the past. I don't know if I said it on your, you can choose to, one day be something or day one and choose that now. And I think that quote is very powerful because we go through life, and a lot of people in our circles and stuff like that say, well, one day I'm going to be like BSI paving. I'm going to do so and so, and I'm going to, pave the world, and I'm going to pave parking lots and roadways. And ultimately, you can't be that person unless you start. And so I really choose to every day be the best version of myself, strive for personal excellence, but ultimately just not myself, but bring others up. So that's pretty much who Ryan Austin is in a nutshell. I know it's long winded, but it dives in the depths of who I want to be and who I want to bring up, and who I want to be around me. Because I mean, obviously I have four kids, so I'm the example. So things are caught, not taught, and I say that because I notice my kids doing some things that I don't like. So I have to internally check myself and say, am I doing this in my life? Where are these kids finding this? Where are these kids doing these things? And really just being the example. So that's basically Ryan Austin in a nutshell.
Go into because you talked about finding talent in people and bringing it out of them. And me knowing you, you have been very good at also finding the good in people in general. Not just people with business, but also people within this world, people that you meet, people that are, um, they're, I can't think of the word right now, but maybe they're they have to leave somewhere, another organization, or for a certain reason, and you've been good about bringing them in and um, you know, finding just bringing the good out of them. And how do you do that? Talk about that a little bit.
So I didn't used to be good at that. And I think that there's a couple people in my life that brought that out in me. And I really realized because back in the day, I used to want to talk. And, I constantly was talking. I'd get in the room and I would talk because I felt like I had to have purpose in the room. I felt like I had to show people who I was, but ultimately I was not doing the right things. And I think we get that confused in life is like we feel like we have to be somebody. But ultimately, if we just sit back and really just listen to respond, I think that's the biggest thing is like I started listening and I started just being that person. Like I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember 3.5 years ago, I went to an event called "Grow Your Business for God's Sakes," and I sat in the room and I was new to my faith and being in a business and going to this faith-based conference as a business owner, it was kind of a little scary. And so I got up there and I'm like, God, please point me in the right direction of what I want to do. And there was a calmness over me. It was almost like, you get this anxiety in a room of a lot of people and you just like, what do I do? Who am I going to go see? What, like you had that agenda. You're like, I got to go meet this person. This person can do this for me. This, and I used to do that. And I was like, you know what? That's too much pressure for people. So like if this is you out there and this is you like saying like that's me, that I feel like that every single time is because you're putting pressure on yourself to perform that something is not that's within you. You want to control the situation instead of letting God take over and really just control the room. And what I mean by that is God's going to put people in your circle, in your place, in front of you to to really just help you get through that. So when I was at this conference, I was like, I just got to be where my feet are. I just got to just take it all in, be where my feet are, and I'll never forget it. I was sitting there in the front of the room, and I was looking back, and somebody stood up, and Bill Schomburg stood up, and he gave thanks for this one guy, which is in our group now, Bruce Pulver. He gave thanks for sending him in his place, and he wanted to give him thanks over and said how much this person meant on stage, and I really just took all that in. And then people were being put in my life, and I met Anthony Hart, which we both know, and I met all these people in this conference, and God was saying, hey, you're listening. I'm now going to give you people in your life that is going to change your impact, change the way you're doing things, change the direction of where you're going. And ultimately, the best thing about that is that's when I started shifting.
Mm.
I started shifting in my faith. I started shifting in my growth. Like people say, level up, level up. You got to be around the people. The five people that you are around is who you are. Well, ultimately, I was around a lot of people that weren't taking me to that level. I was around a lot of people that weren't God driven. I was around a lot of people that were pulling me back and sucking the life out of me. I'm not saying these are bad people. These are people that are lost direction. And so what God was doing is in my life is God was giving me hope. And ultimately, when you have hope, you have something to stand for. And then when you have hope, you have a purpose. You strive for that purpose. And I think that I say it a lot, and I'm going to explain this because I explained it in our men's call this morning is like, you know, purpose plus profit. Well, profit basically, it's not money driven. Profit is internally seeking really just the striving of getting better. Like every day I want to get better. That's my profit. That is exactly what he's giving me. He's giving me profit in the word. I'm getting better, as a person, an individual. Yes, I'm human. I make mistakes, but I know that I'm striving each day to get better. And that's that day one is you have to make sure that you impact people, but you have to start. A perfect example is like, I'm going to start next week working out. And then next week comes around, and then what happens? Something comes up, and you say, well, the following week. Well, if we live in a one day I'm going to get here, we're never starting that day. So every single day I wake up, I say, you know what, God, here's another day. I'm going to go out and do the best I possibly can for this day because ultimately you never know if you have another day. And my wife hates when I say that, but life is real. I'm literally out on the road 24/7 working in my business. And there's days where like I pause and I stop and I literally take 5 seconds and I sit there and I take 5 seconds and all of a sudden, I'm at a light and a car red light blows through it. I'm like, give a little prayer and say, man, if I would have just been impatient and just took off, like most people, I get beeped at least 6 times a day. And the reason why is because I choose to be focused on what I'm doing and the purpose I'm doing, because ultimately you never know if you're going to have another day. So with me being that being said, is like you have to cherish every single second, every single minute, every single hour that you're with people. And we're all human, so we have bad days, but ultimately we can start that day the next day. So if you're having a bad day, and I know this sounds cliche because it's like, well, you don't know what I'm going through. Listen, I've been through a lot. I'm not saying I'm going through what you're going through, but if you have that positive mentality and that switch in your mind, nothing's going to stop you because God's got your back.
Mm.
So that's what I wanted to share a little bit about that because ultimately, to find out talent, ultimately going back is you have to listen and then respond because I was never doing that. I thought I had all the answers. Ultimately, I had zero answers. But now that I can self reflect and see things, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I see a lot more clearer now because, I use the analogy today in my second men's prayer group because I have two men's prayer groups that I do on Tuesday that really just solidifies, every single day because I spend a lot of time with the Lord every single day because that's really important to me. But ultimately, I said it the day is like there's horses, okay? When you see a horse race, okay, they have these blinders on and I used it as an analogy today. They have blinders on, so they don't see what's on the right and they don't see what's on the left. They're focused on the race. They're focused at the finish line. They're focused on going straight. They're focused on what they have to do at hand. When we have open eyes and no blinders on, we get squirreled and we go here and then we get sidetracked and we go here and we go here and we go here. Ultimately, we get sidetracked. So in life, we have to make sure sometimes we have blinders on so we can really focus on winning what we want to do in life. And that's just being better every single day. And so if I get distracted constantly, I'm doing a disservice to myself for personal excellence because ultimately you really have to strive to be better every single day. Otherwise, you will get in a funk. And that funk is not very, very good as a level up circumstance. So, meaning when I get in a funk, that means I'm not being in tune with the Lord because I know that He's got my back. And any problem that I have, He's going to veer me and make sure I'm going in the right direction.
I love that, man. I love where this discussion's just gone to because you made me started really thinking here. And the one thing you said was we feel like we have to be someone in life. And the question is, what is a good life? What is the definition of a good life? A lot of the world today puts the definition of a good life as having money, riches, success, material things, the cars, the watches, successful career, a lot of money coming in on your business. But is that truly what life is fully about? And you start thinking what you just said, living for God, but obviously with life too, we can't forget, um, I know how great of a father you are to your kids and all the travel you do and stuff like that. There's a lot of men out there that don't do that because they're 100% glued to their business. And what are they missing? They're missing a lot on life. There's also, the time with family, stuff like that that stands out too. And just spending those moments that pass by so fast too that you just don't want to live in regret. And Like my dad's getting older, my mom's getting older. I had lunch with my mom the other day. It was awesome. I'm like, man, I need to do this more because I don't make the time to do this. We're always so busy in our days that we forget these little things. So my question to you is, what is life to you? What is a good life? What is Ryan Austin's good life definition?
You know what? It's that's a great question because ultimately every single person's life is different on
Hmm.
what they consider, really just like the most successful. You brought up a lot of things. What are those things? Are those material things? Those are just things. Those are things that people feel like they have to do to really just get status. It makes them feel good in the moment. I really want to share this with this group is because ultimately you can have all the things in the world, but nothing makes you happy if those things just are there. And so it's funny because we have accustomed to habit. Okay, I have a thing where I buy a lot of hats and I buy a lot of shoes. Okay, it's funny because a lot of people are like, I have the same problem. Well,
Same here.
I have a lot of shoes because it makes me feel good. I walk in shoes. I buy nice shoes because ultimately I'm on my feet on a constant day, and those are things, but they're a necessity. I need those things because I ultimately am on my feet every day. I ran a marathon back in October, which really was a huge pivotal moment in my life because I had to dig deep, and that last 4 miles was the most hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's like how many times in your life have you had that really hard moment? And so what I say to this is like you have to make sure that in being successful that those things don't cloud or really give you that cloud around you and that fog that takes you to a different level. Okay, what I mean by that is you veer away from God on things because God ultimately gives you those things. So if he wants you to have things, he's going to give you, but ultimately if you neglect those things, God will take those away from you immediately. And that's why I see so many people in life go from, zero to hero real quick. And then they go right back down to zero because they lose focus on what really is meant for those things. Like when I said purpose plus profit, God wants to reward me with purpose and he's giving me that purpose in life. And then ultimately, my profit in life for me is to be a better person. That's what's making me successful. You know what is even making me what I really strive for? You that question, I'm going to answer it right now. Is ultimately if I have true freedom to be able to go and do things that I need to do. And what I mean by that is I don't miss sports with my kids. I don't care what it is. Like last night, I left work early because it was my daughter's last softball game. She has volleyball, and so we're going right into volleyball. And we've been gone 14 out of 18 weeks for volleyball. That means leaving weekends, going, traveling, doing all this. Your kids grow up. Your kids literally grow up faster than you think. I'm 42 years old. My kids are 16, 14. Well, actually, she just turned 15. Yesterday was her birthday, and when your kids are, now my son's 12 years old and I have a 3-year old. You blink of an eye, your kids are 16. And so when I say that is success in my eyes, forget the cars, forget all the fancy things, forget all that stuff. Ultimately, when I see six people get better and better in life, that's success for me. Seeing my friends, seeing my kids, seeing all these things, they succeed. I know that I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing the right thing around me. So that makes me a successful person. I'm getting emotional about it because I will be your biggest cheerleader. What in turn that does is that fuels me. That fills my cup. That fills my cup so I can go out there and I can make an impact in this world. Not only just a one person, but 4 kids, my wife, my people at work, like literally the people at my company mean everything to me. I have right here, I have cards, multiple cards. I give out cards at least 4 or 5 a week. And I do it because it's personal messages to people that I care about. And that's in my company because ultimately people just want to be seen and heard. If you can do that to somebody, if people can be seen and heard, it starts a ripple effect. And then when that ripple effect happens, you see a lot of good in the world. What we don't see is we see the negative. The negative, when you get around somebody, they push that negative here. And what happens is that person becomes negative. So what, and people, I say this all the time, be so positive that negative people don't want to hang out with you. And that's success in my life, is being around people that push you and excel you and make you better every single day and hold you accountable. Because ultimately, if I'm not being held accountable to my friends and my family and my wife and my kids, and I'm not being held accountable, I'm going to do the things that I shouldn't be doing. Like, for instance, I'm and this might jab people. This might jab people. This is the first time I've actually joined a golf league. And I didn't join a golf league because I thought it was selfish on me because I was missing things on my kids. Well, ultimately, there's times for yourself that you have to have. But ultimately, in my mind, I was saying, nope, that's selfish. I shouldn't do that. I should do my friends' things. And I'm telling you this, you guys, if you think that way, you're actually starting to make a change already in yourself because you're aware of what you're doing is taking time away from your kids. So it has to be very valuable time. So if you take that time away for to clear your head and do those things, you have to do those things. But if you're aware of those things, it's when you're not aware of things and you will drop what you're doing, you'll cancel your kids' events. You won't go to those things. You won't go to tournaments on the weekends because you want to have a social life. That's the problems that we have in this world. You have to be for others. Be that servant leader. And if you are that servant leader, you will have more rewards and more success in your life than anything because ultimately you can do all those fun things. But if you're not internally filled, you will live a very lonely life and a very, very, very just distant life from everybody. I used to live that life. I used to have a lot of friends, but really, how many friends did I have? Because ultimately, when I stopped doing the things I was doing, all my friends went away.
Mm.
You have to make a stance today and start that day and make sure that you push forward. And that's success in my eyes. It's not all the fancy things. I mean, you could look out in my yard right now and see all the equipment. Everybody thinks Ryan's successful, Ryan's successful. That's not what makes me successful. It's the 40 something guys and women that I have in my company that strive every single day to be better. That's what makes me successful. Because ultimately, I'm choosing to have leaders in my company that excel those people out there. And when I have those people, they're making a change in this world. They're almost doing generational impacts because ultimately, those guys might have had a bad life. They might have had no father. They might have not had a mother. They might have had a loss in their life that changed the directory, but now they're getting to be built back up again because ultimately, if we can see things in others and we can bring that out in them, now we're creating literally generational wealth with those people mentally. Not money dollars because dollars and cents don't mean anything if you don't have that mindset. So that's my nutshell and impact of just really just that's the success part because ultimately, you know, I could have all the things, I could buy all the things, but you know, it just makes you a very empty person when you get all those things and nothing's for those things because ultimately those things take away from your time that you should be focusing on others and being a servant leader and your kids because I see too many businesses in this world. They get successful, the owner gets successful, and then what happens? They tend to shy away from the company. I need to step away. They buy all these things. And then what happens is everybody in the company gets resentful because the boss is out there doing fun things while they do all the work. Not saying you can't have nice things, but I'm telling you right now, you need to fight for your people. You need to make sure that you are there for them when they need you. And if you're not, you're being a hypocrite because you got to be a family driven business and you got to make sure that you pour into these people because these people are everything to me. And that's really what it boils down to. That's what makes me successful. And I get really charged up about it because I can walk out in this office right now and literally see every single person working, and it brightens my day every single day. I enjoy coming to work. In fact, I love coming to work. And when I love coming to work, I work in the most success or most stressful business. But the funny thing is, the stress doesn't phase me anymore. Like they say, well, this happened. Well, that was probably a learning experience. What are we going to do about it next time? How are we going to get better next time? And those are the things that we do. And that's what drives success. So hopefully that's a good, 10-minute dissertation on success in my eyes, because
So,
ultimately people's success is different, but that's in my eyes. So,
so good, man. So good. Everybody listening needs to go rewind that right there to everything Ryan just said because it everything you said right there, people want to be seen and not and people want to be seen and heard. The awareness factor, the servant leader factor too. I mean, we live in a world. I was just talking to somebody Sunday about this, and we live in a world of selfishness. We live in a world of just me, me, me. It's all about me. It's not about you. It's just about me. I need to look after myself. And there's people on social media telling you, you need to worry about you, nobody else. That is a huge problem in this world. And it's like you said, that's not what God wants for us. God wants for us to be servant leaders too. And everything you just said was so spot on. Because the selfishness in a lot of people, it affects them in all aspects of their lives, all aspects. Whether it's your relationships, whether it's with your kids, whether it's in your business, whether it's with your family, every single aspect of your life, because you are worried about you, is being affected. And it's probably declining too as well. But if you do what Ryan said and you be more of a servant leader, you give more awareness, you hear people, you listen to them, you make them want to be seen, you see what they're doing and you worry about them and not so much yourself. Things change dramatically for you for the better. Uh it's the selfishness, and the topic I was talking about too is I actually talked with Jay Duran about this too, is there's a high the birth rate is actually way lower these days in America because people are being selfish because they want, oh, I want to go out still. Oh, I want to travel the world before I have kids. Oh, I want to, I can't bring a kid into this world. I don't have time for that. But one of the biggest blessings, and I can say this now after having my son, is bringing a child into this world and knowing that you're going to be able to raise him to be better than yourself.
mm,
And me on this road of personal development to be the best version of myself. Um, and some people think I'm crazy and all the stuff that I do, uh, you know, I can only imagine now being able to pass that on to a child, my son, and him be better than me. That is crazy, right? And he can be, and it was crazy too, because I get chills right now because we just had him dedicated to the church on Sunday, and both pastors prayed over us, and part of the prayer was about his leadership and him becoming a leader in this world. And after the service, though, was a huge thing for me because one of the pastors came up to me and she goes, "The presence I felt with you guys when I put my hand on you," she goes, "God is more present in your life." Like she goes, "It was a huge presence that I felt on you." She goes, "As a father," she goes, "I can tell that you're a great man and you're a great leader." And she goes, "And I could feel it." And
mm,
I was like, "Whoa." And Liz and I looked at each other and we're like, "Whoa." Like, wow, that meant a lot to me. And it also means a lot to me as a father to be able to raise my son as a leader, as, somebody better than me. So the selfishness, like you said, in this world is so bad. There's a lot of great people, but there's a lot of, I think, the fighting with the political sides of things and everything. Like, everybody can't get along whether they're right or left because of the selfishness. They don't want to hear anybody else. They don't want to listen to anybody else. They just want it's their way or the highway. That's it. And that's the way this world has gone deeper and deeper and deeper and all these different sides, whether it's race, whether it's marriage, whether it's all these different things. And it's like, if we would all just sit down and listen, whether you agree or not, you'll take something from somebody, by listening. So,
Well,
uh,
I'll give you a great example of that. Is like how many times do you go to family events and you have oh well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna see Uncle Ted and he's a big time righty and but I got my Aunt Sue, she's over there and she's a lefty. I'm gonna sit there and just watch the show. Well, ultimately that's what we are in a world is
yeah.
we're seeing this big show, and what I like to say is like we have to be part of the solution, not the problem. And what I mean by that is how silly are we for not actually listening to people? Because ultimately, if you listen, doesn't mean you have to agree on anything that people say, but doesn't it give you more wisdom to actually see and hear their opinion on something? Because ultimately, people can give their opinion and they can say whatever they want. Doesn't mean it's true, but to be able to listen to it, to ask questions to that person, to really dissect what that person knows. Because I can sit there for 15 minutes with somebody and ask questions, and I can find out if they really know what they're talking about or they're just spewing what they hear. And the
Mm,
reason why is because when somebody is so sound and confident in what they know, they it's a light, it's a presence, and it's literally like that, like in the when you were up on stage with your son and your wife, that pastor said, "Man, I can see it in you because you are generating a bright white that people can't even see you because it's so bright, and they're saying, what does he have that I don't have?" And I say this all the time is like, you are not I focused anymore. You are a servant leader. You are focused on others, and people tend to be attracted to that.
mm,
And if you are self-served, inwardly focused, I, that's when people run away from you because they don't see very good in you. And then I believe that when we are inward focused and we say I, and the reason why I'm saying this is because this is my opinion because it happened to me. I was I focused 7 years ago before I dropped down the bottom. I literally was I focused. I built this company. I did this. I did that. And it was so wrong. It was the wrong direction. But meanwhile, when that light came out, when I saw a light, I just felt like I had to go towards it. So there's people in your life right now. There's tons of people in your life that you're avoiding, but they really have light because every time you see them, you're like, why is that person always so positive? Why is always that person so happy? Why, like, can't they just get struck down with some bad luck? I always have bad luck. Well, that's the same mentality I said in the beginning. It's either one day I'm going to be this or day one, because you can choose to be the light. You can choose to be that person in other people's life, or you can choose to be that person that is spewing negative and people push you away. Because ultimately, would you rather work for a boss that's I driven, that you need to do this is my way or the highway, or would you rather work for a boss that brings you up and says, you know what, I'm going to get you better, and whatever it takes, we're going to make sure of that. And then, why we're going to do that? Because I see something that nobody sees in you, and I know that it's going to come out soon. So we're going to work really hard to do that. This is what I see. This is what I see. This is what I see. What do you see? I didn't see that. Well, I see it. So I need you to make sure that you see it too. So let's work on these three things because I see so much more in you than you see in me. All it takes is one person to say that in your life. That's that's the generational shift. Like, how many times have you heard, like, I didn't go to college, so probably my kids aren't going to go to college? And in fact, their kids are now saying it because they literally caught the wrong things. You're literally spewing negative stuff in your children's life because you can't see. Get somebody in your life that's positive and watch what happens. Otherwise they'll just go the opposite direction. I'm telling you right now that this is the most powerful thing. And if I had a magic wand and every single person did this in the world would change overnight. It would literally change overnight. And to be honest with you, you want to change, this is what's going to change the world. It's going to be faith. It's going to be being positive to people. It's going to take a conversation that you might not agree at, but you listen and then you respond. You don't say anything. You literally sit there and you don't say anything. Just pretend you have a zipper on your mouth and you zip it and you can't say it till that person's completely done talking. Because what's going to happen in that conversation when you stop and actually listen and ask another question, it's called mirroring. And when you mirror somebody and do that kind of thing, you're actually going to intake in your brain and you're going to question yourself. Is that right? Is that wrong? Ask more questions. Figure out how to do that. Like what makes them think of that? Once you have that, it's the most powerful thing in the world because ultimately you can actually open perspectives on other people's life just by listening to their conversations. And I've noticed that a lot in my company is like, instead of telling people how to do something, ask them. In fact, I'll give you a great story. We have a baseball team. We played on Saturday. We had a tournament all weekend. We played on Friday and Saturday with my son. And Friday night, I was talking to one of the dads, and the dad was saying, my son doesn't listen. He doesn't listen to the coaches. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. And I sat there and I'm like, well, how do we go at this angle differently? And so what I did was is I mirrored and I watched the kid and I saw him. And this is what people need to do in leadership is like they need to watch and then they need to listen and then they need to respond. So here I am watching him and the kid's on his front foot. He's lunging at the ball. He's chopping at it. He's not back on his foot. I was a very good ball player in high school when I was younger. So I'm very attuned to that stuff. Not saying that, I'm the best. I'm just saying that I'm very attuned to watching that. So what I did is I watched it. And when he was done with the game, all Friday, he was done with the game. I came up to him and I said, hey, can I ask you a question? And he's like, yeah, sure. I said, how do you feel you did in batting? He said, you know, I'm not doing good. I'm doing this. I said, well, what are you doing wrong? He's like, well, I'm not on my back foot. I said, well, what would happen if you were on your back foot? And he said, well, I'd probably have more weight. And I said, well, if you had more weight, would you swing better or would you swing worse? He's like, I'd swing better. And I said, well, how about this? If you know that, why don't you get on your back foot, take a lot of pressure off your left foot, your non-bearing foot. And I said, why don't you sit back on it? And when the ball comes, swing as hard as you can. And he literally said, okay. That Saturday, I saw him. I said, hey, buddy, what are you going to do? He's like, this, and this. I said, okay, go up there. He goes up there. I get emotional saying this because this is how we're going to change the world. He goes up there, rips the ball through the gap, runs around the bases, gets the second, gets a double, goes around, scores. He comes in the dugout. He goes, Mr. Austin, I did it. I did it. So I say this because ultimately you have to ask questions. You can't tell people what to do. You have to ask questions and have them be the reason why they do what they do. Because ultimately, other people learn differently. He was being told what to do. Meanwhile, he knew what he had to do, but he wouldn't do it because people were telling him what to do. So I told this story to one of the other parents, and they said, well, wow, that makes sense. And it's a teacher. I told that to the teacher, and he goes, man, that makes perfect sense. He goes, that's exactly what you need to do in life. And I said, well, that's what I do in my company. Because ultimately, I can't tell anybody to do anything. I can ask them what their opinion is. I can ask and I can divulge the truth and figure out what they want to do. But ultimately, it's their decision and what they do. because that's them. That's what they're doing. That's their job. I don't do their job every day. Ultimately, all I do is sit there and watch them. But if you can ask the right questions, you get that. And I get emotional talking about that is because that is what's going to pivot and change the world is because we're so self-centered of I know this, I know how to fix this, I know how to fix that. Ultimately, you don't know how to fix anything because you're not listening and actually giving it. Most people in this world have the answers. They just don't want to tell it. They think they're stupid. They've always been told differently. They've done this, but ultimately, we're all smart because ultimately God made us and we're perfect. So you got to understand that God gave his only son for us. And so if he gave his only son for us, that means we are perfect in his eyes. So we have to go out and actually do what God is wanting us to do. And that's not being a rock, somebody on a rock is sitting there and just waiting. That's going out and being the light, going out and making the impact. That's actually going out and being the change in the world that we need because ultimately this world, this is going to be very dangerous down the road if we
Mhm.
don't change it. And what I mean by that is we have to make sure that we're the light and we're not the darkness. So hopefully that helped you.
I wrote down something based off of what you just said, and this came to my mind as you were talking. People always search for what to do, but not ask what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people, and what's crazy about what you said too is when the right people ask you questions, you usually figure out the problem yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we all are. Like when people start asking you questions, well, like you just did on the baseball example there, you were asking the questions, he answered those questions, and as he's answering the questions, he's assessing it in his brain and then he's fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think people are always searching for answers. They're always searching for the gurus to help them and searching for social media and listening to these influencers on social media. You should do this with your business. You need a cold plunge 5 times a day. You need to go into sauna twice a day. You need to have a morning routine of 40 things, this and that, and then you're done in 4 hours. And then you can get to work. It's like, they're always trying to search for these answers when they pretty much know it. They have the answer if somebody would just ask them, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have anybody that asks them because they are alone and they are searching for somebody like yourself or a leader that can lead them into the solution or the answer.
What's,
And
what's really funny about that, I'm sorry to cut you off. I want to
no,
share
you're
this.
good.
It's not me doing it.
Yeah,
Okay. Once I got the best leadership book in the world, like everybody's looking for the best fix it book. Everybody's
yeah,
looking for that next get rich scheme that looked like if people just realize the best leadership book in this world is the Bible, it's the most sold copies ever to be done. It's
yeah.
literally the best book. If they were just to get their word from the best leadership book in the world, they would truly become a better leader because what ultimately God is doing is he's trying to make better leaders in this world to fix all this. And what I mean by that is we're not leaders, we're shepherds to him. We
Mm,
need to go out and be the light. We need to go out and actually just be the generational fix. Ask those questions. Because I'll tell you right now, that kid, that's going to change the directory of that kid's life
oh,
because he doesn't even know it. It's going to trend where he's going to get better and better and better. And ultimately, it's all by a question. Like it's all about a question. Like when I'll give you another example. Like when I went 3 years ago when I didn't have any salespeople and I was just struggling because I was like I don't see good in these people. I just God show me what I need to do. And God's like, well, you're gonna do it on yourself because you don't believe in me. And I'm like, whoa, like I just got nailed. He's like, well, you're doing everything by yourself, so you got it all figured out. So I'll just take everything away from you. So he took everything away from me, and I like literally had to think about this, and then ultimately had to have questions in my head of like, how do I fix this? Well, ultimately, I had to seek his guidance. I had to give him who I am. I had to say, you know what? If I'm broke again, like I was when I was a kid and a teenager and everything, if I go to that point again, I, I'm not scared. God, if you want to take everything, go ahead, take it. But ultimately, if I don't give it all to you, I'll probably die of a heart attack because it's just too stressful. So what I did is I actually gave it over to him, and he showed me and he pointed the right direction. We talk about it a lot lately in the last couple of calls we've had, is like the Holy Spirit is around us. And what I mean by that is that's something that kicks in your brain that says you got to do this.
Hmm.
Hey, see that person over there? Go over and help them. Hey, see that person here? Oh, hey, something is going to happen. Just keep an eye out, and you think and you see, and then all of a sudden something walks in front of you, and you're like, yep, this is the person. I'm going to go up and say something. How many times I was literally coming back from the tournament last weekend from Indiana, Shipshewana, and we went to a steakhouse to my daughter and I. It was just her and I, Sienna, and we went in and we ate a great dinner. It was fast, but we ate because we was in Clearwater, Michigan. We were coming back, and I'm like, I want to take her to dinner and enjoy her. We were coming out of the restaurant, and there was two parents and two kids, and I held the door, and I do that all the time. Like ultimately, I do it all the time. And these parents walk out, and the kids walk out, and my daughter looks at me, and she goes, "Wow, they didn't say thank you." And that is the reality of what's happening in this world. People are so inwardly focused. I. They
Hmm.
expect people to hold the door. They expect things. But here's the thing: is guess what my kid did? My kid noticed it immediately. And when you notice things like that, you don't do them yourself.
Hmm.
You literally like they're catching those things. So my kids, I call them superhumans because they're so good at catching those things, is because ultimately, if they catch those things, they won't do those things because they see it. Just like my son this morning when I was talking to him, all this stuff happens to me every single day, guys. And it's what I'm so grateful for. As I was talking to my son, and there was two kids riding their bikes. I'm like, hey, there's so and so. He goes, well, I don't like that kid. And I said, well, why don't you like that kid? And I said, you should like everybody. And he goes, well, that kid makes fun of people. That kid does this. That kid does that, and he catches that thing. He catches it. And I said, well, you know what, buddy? I said, well, why don't you ask him those questions? Why don't you ask him why? Why he does those things? That's the shift. I'm getting emotional because that's what we have to do in this world. Not be like, well, you don't need to be with that person. Stay away from him. Like that kid needs it more than anybody in this world. Go up to him. Hey, buddy, can I talk to you for a few minutes? I need to ask you a question. What's going on in your day to day?
Hmm.
I noticed this. Why do you do that? Something go on at home? Those are the things that will shift this world. How many times have you heard that person's no good, stay away from that person?
Hmm.
How many times is hey, how many times is and I'm guilty of this, guys, so don't think I'm perfect. How many times have you looked at somebody and say, well, I don't need to be around that person. That person does this, this, and this. Ultimately, that person needs you more than anybody. There was that one person for me. You need to be that one person. Because if you can be that one person in somebody's life, you will change. You will change the generational curse. You will change the directory. Because I can guarantee that kid is struggling more than anybody in that school. Probably with his parents, probably with attention, probably with love. He has no hope. Now, if you think about that, how sad is that? We have a structure in a society now that shuns people for doing bad. Well, why? What's the root of the problem? Ultimately, we're the root of the problem. The educational system, the politicians, the presidents, they're all the problem because we're not doing something about it. It's almost like when you see a video and somebody's videotaping a fight or somebody's videotaping an altercation. Why are we videotaping an altercation? Why aren't we being a part of the solution? Why don't we go over there and try to be the solution? Why are we starting to videotape and show it all the way? You know why? Because we want that significance. We're looking for significance in the wrong things in this world. That's how we fix the world. We got to start seeking significance from who really we should be seeking significance about, our true Father.
Mm.
And that's what's going to change the world. People are going to be like, holy crap, man, this guy cannot change the world. You're right. I can't. I can't. I'll never be able to change the world. But I'll tell you right now, when we have millions and millions and millions and millions of people doing what I'm doing, guess what happens? That changes the world. That is what's going to change the world. Could you imagine if 1 million people today, when they were about to get into an altercation with somebody, asked a question? How are you feeling today? Is everything all right? I noticed tension from you. Everything all right at home? How's work? Do you need my help with anything? I can take some load off you. What do you need me to do? Can you imagine if 1 million people said that today? If 1 million people said that today, I guarantee tomorrow it would be 1.2. 1.2 does it? Guarantee 1.4 will do it the next day. And the reason why is because now you're changing the directory of how people's day are. And if we can seek positive instead of negative, why do you think the media nowadays shuns out negative all the time? Because it's redirecting your brain to go to the negative parts. And then when you have negative in your brain, what do? You become negative. You become inwardly focused. You become very, very like out of touch with reality. In my men's prayer group, he said, well, this, and this, and people are calling me, and people are doing this, and people are doing that. I don't even know who to trust anymore. I said, there's only one person to trust, and that's the man upstairs. Because he will make sure that you go and do what you need to do because he is the right person for you. And I say this, and everybody's like, oh my God, this hocus pocus guy is talking about this. Ultimately, that's the problem in your mind is like you have no hope for change. So you're stuck in this thing. I'm giving you hope right now. Go out and do this for a week straight, every single day. Go up to somebody and say, hey, I notice you're struggling. Can I give you a hug? Hey, I noticed, you're struggling with your kid. You know, do you need any advice? I have 4 kids. It's seeking those things to help others and being servant leaders is what's going to change the world.
Unbelievable. I mean, the perspective too of going to somebody, that is constantly talking crap about people or bullying people or just has a negative attitude all the time and just walking up to him and being like, what's going on? Like, what's the matter with you? Like, everything okay? You want to talk about it? Why do you do what you do?
Mm-hmm.
Many people, majority of people don't do that because they're just like, all right, I don't want to be around a negative person. So they
Mm-hmm.
shun them or they go around them and they become negative people too. And there's never that let's have a conversation. And I think it comes out of fear, maybe, especially if you have a friend like that too. And maybe it comes out of fear of the friendship, losing the friendship, but you're ultimately losing the friendship anyway, because if you're friends with somebody that's talking negative and you don't want to be around a negative person, you're really not going to be good friends with that person,
Mm-hmm.
So wow, yeah, that was
How
really
many
good.
times have I? How many times have I talked to you about a person and asked for your advice or how we can directly change this person?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Like that's that is that's not talking gossip. That's not doing anything like that. That's being true of what you're supposed to be doing. Like
Yeah.
we are truly seeking like help for these people and we're trying to give them hope. And ultimately, if we do this in this world with all our friends and everything, and I talk about this a lot with my mentors and my best friends and my coaches, it's like we have to be the change and we have to be the light. And if we can't do that, we're just going to live a very lonely life because ultimately things don't buy you happiness. Because
Mm,
ultimately we always seek either for guidance or help, or we seek for other validations. And what we do is we get inwardly focused. I see this all the time in social media with coaching and everything. Everybody is just trying to validate what they think they can do. And I'm not saying that all coaches are bad, but ultimately, if they're in with the word and they're talking and they're doing everything faith based and everything, I would trust that person over anybody else.
mhm.
And what I mean by that is because they are truly learning for the best leadership book in the world. So ultimately, for me, most of my mentors, some of them are pastors, some of them are wise, 60, 70-year-old men that have been through this, that have seen the transition from the 50s and 60s to 70s to 80s to 90s to now. And to be honest with you, their perspective is very interesting, very unique. And I'm not saying every perspective is different, but I learned so much wisdom from these people. I have a mentor that, is probably one of the smartest individuals I've ever met. And what I mean by that is he's very driven to help people. He's very analytical on things. He's grown a multi-billion dollar company. And he's so humble. He is so humble. And I learned something from him a couple weeks ago. We had lunch and we were talking about some things, and there was a social media post that I put. And he like, when you're talking to somebody, you're like, he's asking you questions, and you're like, holy crap, dude, this guy's right. But he's not telling you anything. He's literally like, hey, what about this? And in your brain, you're instantly saying, well, is this the right reason for me doing this? Should I be doing this? Like you're asking yourself, he did the exact same thing to me as I did with that boy
Mm.
coaching. He literally dug deep and got the things out that I needed to hear, but he didn't say anything. He just asked questions. So meanwhile, I I've been on social media for the last 3 weeks, probably 1.5 hours total, completely total, an hour and a half in 3 weeks. Okay. Not only have I been off it 3 weeks, I haven't received a call from anybody saying, where have you been? I also, in fact, so much that we think that we seek validation for social media. This is going to be good, guys, because this is either going to hit you hard or this is going to literally, destroy your world right now. We are not as big as we think we are.
Mm.
I'm going to repeat that. We are not as big as we think we are because ultimately we are seeking the things that we think we need to seek. And ultimately, it's the wrong things because ultimately, 3 weeks and I haven't received one call saying that I haven't been on social media. Guess what, guys? I'm not as big as I think. And guess what? That made me think that, guess what? I'm going to get off social media a little bit. And I'm not saying that this is like something that I'm going to be gone forever, but guess what? How much freedom I've had the last 3 weeks? Guess how much free time I've had the last 3 weeks? Because ultimately, if you're spending 15 to 20 minutes on social media, you're spending 15 to 20 minutes on something that you could truly be doing to help others and being servant leaders. Can you imagine like me surfing on social media for an hour to two a day and missing out on an opportunity of running into somebody and asking somebody a question that could impact and change the directory of their life? That is powerful. Who loses if you don't show up? Well, if you don't show up and you're on social media all day, who's going to lose? Your business, your friends. You know why? Because ultimately, you're not being your true self. You're not being the best version of yourself. Because ultimately, when we hold our cameras up in front of our face, how much time are we wasting? Not only with work, but how much time are we wasting with our kids? If I'm on my phone around my kids, what does that say to them? That says that they're not as important as the phone. And I falter for that. So I'm working on that. So that's why the last 3 weeks has been a huge change in my life. And the reason why is because now I'm present more with my kids because I'm not doing the things that I thought I should have been doing. And that's God slapping me and saying, hey, Ryan, you're not doing what I told you to do. Trust me, Ryan, you are doing this for this, and you're seeking all the wrong things. And he slapped me and he said, well, guess what happens when I quit social media for a little while? Now I'm getting emails from people that want me to speak. Now I'm getting calls as people want me to get on stage. And the funny thing is I thought that's why I did it when I was on social media, but really I wasn't. God was actually holding me back from what I needed to do, and He took that away from me because I was focused on the wrong things. Not saying this is something I want to do, because ultimately I don't want to do this all the time. I thought I wanted to do it. So ultimately, I get this opportunity and I talk to the people and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you one thing. I said, this is the only stipulation I have. I said, as long as I can stand up there and be the true Ryan Austin and speak through, my faith and have the conversation, I will be there. If not, I'm not interested. And in fact, so much I said that and I was so powerful, they told me that I was the first person that's ever said that. And they are more excited about me being on stage than they've ever been. Because ultimately, I'm not jeopardizing what I'm truly supposed to be doing because God wants me to do something bigger and better because that's that purpose. If you have purpose, that will be basically change the directory of people's life cycle. And what I mean by that is how many times have you seen somebody go from zero to hero in your company? For me, that's happened a lot. And now they're going on vacations every year. When meanwhile, they never went on a vacation ever before they got here. How many people have I seen literally employment verifications for mortgages are up like 20% in my company? Those are things that drive me
Mm.
because ultimately, if I'm getting that, that's amazing. Ultimately, also another thing is how many child support things am I getting now? Very few, because the people I have here are going to the court system saying, I want to be a father. I want to take care of my people. I'm not getting blindsided with those things like I used to. That's the culture shift if you become a true shepherd of Him and you learn from the best leadership book in the world.
Unbelievable, man. 100% right. And I've been, as far as faith, trying to dive more into the Bible, and a lot of listeners out there too. I mean, there's probably a lot of questions for you, obviously, and how you do it, and because the Bible's not an easy book to read, obviously. But when you diagnose it and get into it and kind of start to learn it and get around people that know it, that you can ask questions to, um, it's huge. And that's when that voice within you, the Holy Spirit, you start to hear and be able to listen and be more intentional. My word for the year this year is intentional, and that's been a mission to me, is to just see things, hear things, believe things, and that are happening around me. And all these different things, that stages and things that happen in your lives happen for a reason, because I'm a big believer now that God's opening another door, saying, all right, I'm going to slow you down a little bit here so you can go here. And I'm telling you to go here. And if you don't go here, you're just going to be slowed down. You're just going to sit there. So you make the choice. Like, I'm giving you this time, go here. Yes, you should do this also. Yes, you should go coach football and help kids. Yes, you should, do these other things too, as long as your wife allows it, which she does, and supports it. But it's you know it it's just crazy when you become intentional, like you said, and start listening, and then you start doing, and you start diving in more, and you slow down a little bit and you make time for God. That's the thing. And like you and I have, we can go on for another hour about this, but you're definitely coming on again, obviously. And it's making the time, saying the prayer. um, I reached out to Matt about the Holy Spirit the other day while I was walking, and I said, "How do I hear him more?" And Matt was like, "Pray, pray
Mm-hmm.
more. Stop and pray throughout your day." That was the long answer short, is basically, take the time to talk, and then you'll hear. The more you
Mhm.
talk, the more you'll hear. And that kind of goes, it's crazy how what I just said there revolves around this whole entire thing, this whole entire conversation you and I just had today about listening and asking questions and talking to people and speaking to them and making them be heard and just wow, what an episode, man. And love having you on. This is good to be back on here too and being able to do this with you. There'll be many more for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, like I think the biggest thing is before we go is like I want to read something. I think it's pretty powerful. It says, it's Habakkuk 2:2, and I learned this probably about a couple of years ago, and it said, the Lord's answer, and it says, write down your revelations and make it plain on a tablet so that basically you can hear. Maybe may run with it. For a revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks on the end and will not prove false. Through its linear, wait for it. It will certainly come and it will not delay. So when I'm going to dissect that verse is like you have to ask God for what you want. If you don't ask God what you want, He will not get it. Doesn't mean it's going to happen today. Doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. But God is creating something that He is ready. Like if you're ready for it, He's going to give it. If you're not, He's going to let you go through those hard times. You just said it. That's exactly what this verse says. It literally, and to be honest with you, 3 years ago, I didn't even know what this was.
Mm,
Like literally. So like when you say the Bible and you get into it and you dive into it and start talking about the Holy Spirit, when you get into it and you start reading it, you start to notice things that don't make sense. That's leaning into it a little bit more. And then what happens is God points those things out to you in your life. And so like this Habakkuk 2:2 is like make it plain. Make it like put it out there for everybody to see. And if God wants you to have that, He's going to make sure you have that. And I truly believe that because everything that I'm saying and everything that I'm doing, not only for others, because you can't be inwardly focused, you can say, I want this world to be a better place. And you can say it every single day. If you don't say it every single day, it might not happen. Put it out there. That's why everybody always says, like in my company, it's so funny because they think I'm like, a magician or something because I like say stuff a lot and they're like, why does it always happen? Like, why every time you say something, why does it always happen? And I said, well, it always doesn't happen. It just, I'm letting you know what's going to happen because I know that that's what's supposed to happen. And I have, like, I'm telling you, man, it's so crazy because everybody comes up to me and like, how do you know? How does this happen to you all the time? It's because right now there's such a light around me that I feel like God's got my back and He's going to make sure that I go to the next level. But ultimately, I get these ebb and flows, and when I get in the funk, guess what? I got to reflect on what I'm doing and my perspective of what I'm doing, and is that truly what God wants me to do?
mm,
Because ultimately, if you're in a place in your life you need to check what you're doing because everybody's like, well, I had a good run and everything was good for months and months. And it's like now you got to reflect on what you're doing that God gave you that now you're abusing. Because ultimately, God will give you money, but God will take it away immediately. That's why it's so funny. And then, and I'll end with this. And when we leave, because this is so pivotal, is like, how many times have people say, well, if I win the lottery, I'm going to give this to this person. I'm going to give this to this person. I'm going to give this to this person. They say it all the time because they know that if they win, they're going to have so much money they'll give it to. How about take it a step farther? I'm going to give this and this and this, but I don't have anything. Watch what happens then
mm-hmm,
because ultimately God will give you stuff that you need, but He's not going to give you things that you don't need. And winning the lottery is not what you need. God wants you to be the best version of yourself and go out and make an impact, and then He will reward you. If that's education, if that's friendship, I'll tell you right now, I've got more friendships and that's all I care about. Like I actually got truly, truly genuine friendships. 6 years ago, I thought I had friends, but I didn't. So that's more rewarding than anything. Because ultimately, if you have friendships and you can call somebody and you can lean on them, hey man, I'm going through this. What do you think? That's more powerful than anything. And that's what I want to be, is I want to be that person for somebody that they can call and they can and say, hey, I'm going through this. And if I haven't been through it, I can't give that advice. But if I have went through it, I can give my perspective based on asking them questions on getting the full facts. How many times have you answered something? And I used to do this all the time. How many times have people reacted and answered and said something when they don't have all their information?
Hmm.
Like for instance, a perfect way to lead people, and then I'm going to end on this, is when somebody asks you something, instead of rushing out the answer, ask for more clarifications. Help me better understand this. Help me better understand that. Help me better understand this. Ultimately, you might even have 4 or 5 questions, and the person already knows the answer in front of you. Because I had that happen to me all the time. Because ultimately, the question is really just seeking validation because you don't feel like you have the right answer. So we ask questions instead of going and seeking the right answers. That's all I have for today, man. I just like I said, I love being on your podcast. I love that we're really good friends. I love that we talk every week. I truly believe that you know if I didn't have people like you in my life, like I don't feel like I would be as held accountable. And what I mean by that is are you around people that hold you accountable and make sure that you're doing the right things? Because ultimately, if you don't have the right people, you're just going to go through days every single day and saying I'm doing everything I possibly can and everything's good, blah blah blah. But meanwhile, you're living a very very inwardly life, and it's very 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 lonely.
Hmm.
So if you're lonely out there, that's what you have to ask yourself. What am I doing wrong? How do I seek the right? And who do I need to be around to be that way? Because ultimately, if you're around people that are sucking the life out of you, they're going to suck the life out of you. They're going to take everything from you instead of giving everything to you.
I love it, man. I couldn't agree more. Like everything you said, I feel the same right back to you too, man. Because it's like when you get around good people, you get around people that just push you, motivate you, are there for you too. It's I haven't had that before because my friends from the past, like it was more about partying, stuff like that, and like as I've gotten older and wiser, they say, you start to form new relationships, especially through these groups and stuff like that, and that's why we joined these groups because they led to these things. That's God had a plan. It was part of His plan for you and I to become good friends and meet each other and be around each other too. And it is an amazing thing. So anybody out there listening, I highly recommend just getting around, trying to get around other people rather than your local neighborhood and just get out there. And everything Ryan said today was so spot on. So re-listen to this one too, because I know I'm gonna re-listen to this. I was on it. So Ryan, with that being said, man, where can people find, connect with you? Obviously, you'll come back on again. We'll do
Yeah, so on Instagram, obviously I'm not on social media. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you my social platforms, but I'm going to really, if you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn, Ryan Austin, and I'm actually in Michigan. So reach out to me. Also to Instagram, the real Ryan Austin, and then Ryan Austin on Facebook. Like I said, it's not something that if you feel called to reach out to me, you feel called message Bill, and I can give you my cell phone number. But man, it's just I see things so clear now, and I want to be the light in the room. I want to be I want to see other people that are in the light, and I'm seeing it all around me right now. And so like these these really cool things that are happening, it's because I'm leaning and I'm abiding more than ever. And I truly believe that once you do that, once you literally lean and you just keep leaning and you keep leaning, and when you don't think you're leaning enough, keep leaning, you will literally be taken away. And what I mean by that is you're going to learn those things in the Bible. I mean, I never thought I would actually be reading the Bible and actually, taking it all in and actually dissecting it and really just taking it all in. I mean, it's so crazy how many Bible verses, just by a couple words, what it impacts somebody's life on a daily basis. So that's pretty much it, bud. And I really appreciate the time. And I love getting out here because ultimately, if you watch our last episode, it's a lot different than now because my life is going in a direction where God has me. And to be honest with you, by the next time I get on here, there's going to be other stories that I had that can impact somebody, and ultimately every story that I see, everything I do is accustomed to what God's putting in my life, and now that I'm not clouded and so busy, I see it. And that's why when we started this conversation, and it's almost like a 360, is like you really have to stop and listen. And once you start listening, you start seeing things and hearing things that you've never heard before. And that's when your life starts to pivot and change. Because ultimately, if you don't see things, how can you implement things?
Ryan Austin, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on. Like we just talked about, many more in the near future here. And with all you listening, I appreciate you all. Please take the time, like, share, comment, subscribe, 5-star review definitely after this one, and share this with everybody that you can. It goes a long way, and we will see you guys on the next episode.